The scariest phone call of my life was the one I never got. If my flight hadn't been canceled that Tuesday, if I'd stayed one more night in that hotel like I was supposed to, I don't know what I would have come home to find 3 days later instead of 3 hours. Some mistakes save lives. That flight cancellation was mine. Welcome back to Dad Lore Story. If you've ever had one small twist of fate change everything for the people you love, stay with me, because this one still gives me chills when I think about how close we came to a different ending. Before I get into what I found when I walked through my own front door that night, hit subscribe, drop a like, and let me know in the comments what state you're watching from. I read every single one. My name is Marcus Bennett. I'm 41 years old, and I work as a regional sales manager for an industrial equipment company based out of Columbus, Ohio. My wife, Sarah, is 38, and we've been married for 11 years. We have 2 kids, Ella, who's 9, and Jake, who's 6. I travel for work, usually 3 or 4 nights a week, and Sarah's always been the steady one, the one who holds the house together while I'm out on the road. Tuesday, October 14th, I was supposed to be in Pittsburgh for 2 more nights, closing a deal with a distributor. But the client's plant had a shutdown, and my afternoon meeting got canceled with about 2 hours' notice. I could have stayed, killed time in the hotel, but something in me just wanted to go home a day early and surprise the kids at breakfast. I got back into town around 9:40 that night. Our street was quiet, the way it always is, porch lights on, nothing out of the ordinary. I remember thinking how normal everything looked as I pulled into the driveway. I let myself in through the garage door, the way I always do, calling out, "Sarah? I'm home early." No answer. The kids' shoes were by the door, so I knew they were asleep upstairs already, probably with the babysitter gone for the night. I walked toward the kitchen, and that's when I heard it. A sound I still hear some nights when I can't sleep. A low, broken kind of crying, coming from the hallway near the laundry room. I found her on the floor. Sarah, sitting against the wall, a cut above her eyebrow bleeding down the side of her face, her wrist swollen and already starting to bruise, her whole body shaking. The back door off the laundry room was standing wide open, cold October air pouring into the house. "Sarah," I said, dropping to my knees in front of her. "Sarah, look at me. What happened? Who did this?" She could barely get words out between the crying, but I caught enough. Someone had come in through that back door less than 20 minutes before I walked in. Someone she recognized. If you've ever walked into a moment where every instinct in your body goes cold at once, take a second and hit that like button right now. It helps other families find this story, and trust me, what happens next is going to matter. I called 911 with one hand and held Sarah with the other, and in the middle of that terrifying, adrenaline-soaked blur, she said one name that made my blood turn to ice, because it was someone I actually knew. The name Sarah said was Ryan Pierce. My cousin's husband. Not a stranger, not some random intruder, someone who'd sat at our Thanksgiving table 2 years running, someone who knew our garage code because he'd house sat for us once when we went to Florida. The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes, and the police right behind them. Sarah was treated for a concussion, a fractured wrist from where she'd fallen against the washing machine trying to get away, and the cut above her eye that needed 4 stitches. Physically, she was going to heal. But sitting in that emergency room waiting area at midnight, watching her hands still trembling around a paper cup of water, I understood healing was going to mean more than stitches. Once she was stable enough to talk properly, Sarah told the detective, a woman named Officer Reyes, what had happened. Ryan had shown up at the back door claiming car trouble, asking to use the phone. Sarah, recognizing him as family, let her guard down and let him in. Within minutes, it became clear he wasn't there about a car. He'd been struggling financially for months, a gambling problem none of us knew about, and he'd convinced himself, in some desperate, twisted logic, that Sarah kept cash in the house from her small online resale business. When she told him she didn't, he grabbed her arm, and things escalated fast. Sarah fought back hard enough to break free, which was when she fell against the machine and cut her head. Ryan fled out the same back door the moment he heard my truck pull into the driveway. Officer Reyes was direct with us that night. "You did the right thing calling immediately," she said. "Physical evidence, your wife's statement, security footage from your neighbor's doorbell camera catching him on your street. This is a strong case. But he's going to need to be found and arrested first." That part took 4 days. Ryan didn't go home. He didn't answer calls. My cousin, his wife, was as shocked as we were. She'd had no idea about the gambling, no idea about any of it. For 4 days, I barely slept, jumping at every car door that closed outside, every text notification. Sarah stayed with her sister for 2 of those nights because our house didn't feel safe to her anymore, and honestly, I understood completely. I changed every lock, installed cameras on every entrance, and sat up most nights in the living room like I was standing guard over a house that had already been violated once. On the 5th day, Officer Reyes called. Ryan had been picked up 2 states away, at a small motel outside Louisville, Kentucky, trying to pawn a watch that turned out to belong to Sarah's father, taken from our house that same night. That detail was what finally moved the case from a family dispute framing into a clear criminal charge. Burglary, assault, and attempted robbery, all documented, all connected by evidence that couldn't be argued away. I remember sitting across from Officer Reyes in our kitchen, the same kitchen I'd walked through calling Sarah's name 5 days earlier, and asking her the only question that mattered to me at that point. "What happens now?" "Now," she said, "we build a case strong enough that this doesn't just go away with an apology and a plea deal. If that's what you and your wife want." I looked at Sarah, sitting at the table with her wrist in a cast, and she looked back at me with something steadier in her eyes than I'd seen since that night. "We want him to actually answer for this," she said. "Not quietly. Not privately. I want it on record." That decision was about to lead us into a courtroom 5 months later, and into a conversation with my own cousin that neither of us was fully prepared for. If a story like this is hitting close to home, remember to hit subscribe on Dadlore Story so you don't miss how this one resolves. Family isn't always who shares your blood, and sometimes the people closest to you show you exactly who they really are, for better or worse. The 5 months between that October night and the trial date were some of the strangest of my life. Sarah went to physical therapy for her wrist twice a week. The cut above her eye healed into a thin scar she covers now with her bangs, though she tells me some days she barely notices it anymore. We both went to counseling, separately and together, because what happened in our own home didn't just injure her body, it shook something in both of us about safety, about trust, about how well you can really know someone who sits at your dinner table. My cousin, Michelle, called me twice during those months. The first call, she was in tears, apologizing on Ryan's behalf, asking if there was any way we'd consider dropping the charges for the sake of family. I understood her position. He was her husband, the father of her 2 kids, but I told her gently and honestly that this wasn't a decision built on family loyalty anymore. It was about what happened in my house, to my wife. The second call, closer to the trial date, Michelle told me she'd filed for divorce herself, and that she finally understood we hadn't been trying to destroy her family. Ryan had already done that the night he walked through our back door. The trial was in March. Sarah testified for nearly 2 hours, describing exactly what happened, calm and precise, the same steadiness in her voice that I'd seen return to her slowly over those 5 months. The doorbell camera footage from our neighbor was played for the jury. Ryan's car, time-stamped, parked down the block, then Ryan himself walking toward our house 11 minutes before Sarah's 911 call, and running from it 4 minutes after. The watch, pawned 2 states away, sealed the pattern the prosecutor needed. Ryan was convicted on all 3 charges: burglary, assault, and attempted robbery. He was sentenced to 7 years, with the possibility of parole after 4, on the condition of a mandatory gambling addiction treatment program and a permanent no-contact order regarding our family. I didn't feel triumphant when the verdict came in. I didn't feel like celebrating. What I felt, sitting next to Sarah in that courtroom, her hand steady in mine for the first time in months, was something closer to relief, The specific relief of watching a system actually work the way it's supposed to, of watching someone be held accountable in the open, in front of everyone, instead of the whole thing getting quietly buried for the sake of keeping peace at a family dinner table. Sarah and I talk about that October night sometimes, usually late, after the kids are asleep. She told me once that the hardest part wasn't the physical pain. It was those first 4 days, not knowing if he'd come back, not knowing if trusting family had been a mistake she'd have to live with forever. What helped her most, she says, wasn't just the locks I changed or the cameras I installed. It was that I came home. Not the next week, not the next scheduled flight, that specific canceled meeting, that one small twist of timing that put me in our driveway at exactly the moment she needed someone to walk through that door. I don't know if I believe in fate, exactly, but I believe in showing up. I believe that some nights, the most important thing you can do for the people you love is simply be there, unannounced, right when it counts. Thank you for watching my story today on Dad Lore Story. If this reminded you of a time you had to protect someone you love, or a moment you're grateful you showed up when it mattered most, drop a comment below and let me know. I read every single one. Like this video, subscribe for more stories like this one, and remember, home should always be the safest place in the world. Fight to keep it that way. Take care of yourselves out there.